In this episode, we look at recovery locations and environmental planning, because resilience is not only about having backups or written plans. An organization also needs to think about where people and systems will operate if the normal location becomes unavailable. A fire, flood, power failure, extended outage, major storm, construction accident, or regional emergency can make a building unusable even when the data itself is still safe. Resilience sites give the organization a place to continue or restore operations when the primary site cannot support the business. The main site types you need to understand are hot sites, warm sites, and cold sites. Each one represents a different balance between speed, cost, and readiness. None is automatically best in every situation. The right choice depends on how quickly the organization needs to recover, how much downtime it can tolerate, how much it can spend, and which functions are most critical. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A hot site is the most ready of the common recovery site options. It is a location that is already equipped with the systems, connectivity, power, facilities, and often current or near-current data needed to resume operations quickly. You can picture a hot site as a recovery environment that is waiting for the organization to shift work to it. It may have servers, network connections, configured applications, work areas, security controls, and tested procedures already in place. Because it is so ready, it is usually the fastest option for recovery. That speed comes at a high cost. Maintaining a hot site means paying for equipment, space, connections, support, licensing, monitoring, testing, and ongoing synchronization. It may be the right choice for services where downtime creates serious financial, safety, legal, or operational consequences. The key idea is readiness. A hot site costs more because it is kept close to usable all the time. A warm site sits between a hot site and a cold site. It has some important pieces already prepared, but it is not as fully ready as a hot site. A warm site may have space, power, network connectivity, basic hardware, and some pre-configured systems, but it may still require data restoration, final configuration, application updates, staffing steps, or equipment setup before full operations can resume. This makes it less expensive than a hot site, but slower to bring online. A warm site can be a practical choice when an organization needs a reasonable recovery time, but cannot justify the cost of maintaining a fully active alternate environment. You can think of it as a site that has a foundation already built. It is not empty, but it is not fully operational either. The exam often frames warm sites as a compromise. They provide moderate readiness, moderate recovery speed, and moderate cost. A cold site is the least prepared and usually least expensive recovery site option. It may provide a physical location with basic environmental support, such as space, power availability, and perhaps network access, but it does not usually include all the hardware, current data, configured systems, or ready-to-use applications needed for immediate recovery. If a company uses a cold site, it may need to bring in equipment, install systems, restore data, configure connections, and prepare work areas before operations can continue. That can take significant time. A cold site may be acceptable for business functions that can tolerate longer downtime or for organizations with limited budgets and lower recovery urgency. The benefit is lower ongoing cost. The trade-off is slower recovery and more work during a stressful event. When you see a scenario where cost is the main concern and recovery time is less urgent, a cold site may be the best match. The easiest way to compare hot, warm, and cold sites is to think about the relationship between readiness and cost. A hot site is highly ready, fast to use, and expensive to maintain. A warm site is partly ready, takes more time to activate, and costs less than a hot site. A cold site is minimally ready, takes the longest to activate, and usually has the lowest ongoing cost. That trade-off matters because resilience planning is never unlimited. A hospital emergency system, financial transaction platform, or public safety service may need very fast recovery. A small internal reporting system may be able to wait longer. An organization might even use different site strategies for different services. Critical systems may have hot site support, while less critical systems use warm or cold arrangements. Good planning does not ask which site type sounds strongest. It asks which level of readiness matches the business impact of downtime. Environmental planning is the physical side of resilience. It asks whether the recovery location can actually support people, systems, and operations under real conditions. This includes power, cooling, heating, ventilation, fire suppression, water risks, physical security, cabling, workspace, equipment racks, network rooms, access roads, parking, and basic facilities for staff. A recovery site that has servers but poor cooling may fail quickly. A site with office space but weak connectivity may not support the business applications people need. A site in a flood-prone area may not be a good backup for a primary site with the same flood risk. Environmental planning forces you to look beyond the label hot, warm, or cold and ask whether the location can function when pressure is high. Recovery is not just a technical event. It is also a physical, logistical, and human event. Geography matters because a recovery site should not be exposed to the exact same risks as the primary site. If the main office and recovery site are located too close together, one regional event could affect both. A hurricane, wildfire, ice storm, power grid failure, earthquake, or civil disruption could make both locations unavailable at the same time. Distance helps reduce shared risk, but distance also creates new challenges. A site that is far away may be harder for staff to reach. It may require different network paths, different vendors, different legal considerations, and more planning for travel or remote work. The right geographic choice balances separation from common hazards with practical access and operational needs. In a Security Plus scenario, pay attention to whether the question describes regional disasters, shared utilities, or travel limitations. Those details often point to geography as part of the resilience decision. Power planning is one of the most important parts of environmental resilience because almost every modern operation depends on electricity. A recovery site may need redundant utility feeds, backup generators, fuel contracts, battery systems, surge protection, and tested power distribution. It is not enough to say that the site has power. The organization should know how long backup power can last, what systems it supports, how generators are maintained, how fuel will be delivered during a regional emergency, and whether the power design has single points of failure. A site with excellent servers and network equipment still fails if power is unreliable. Power planning also affects cooling, lighting, physical security systems, badge readers, elevators, communications equipment, and user workstations. Resilience depends on the whole environment, not only on the primary computing systems. When power planning is weak, recovery plans can look strong on paper and fail during the first real outage. Connectivity is just as important as the building itself. A recovery location needs reliable ways to connect users, applications, partners, cloud services, data centers, and remote workers. That may require multiple network providers, diverse physical paths, redundant routers, secure remote access, tested failover, and enough bandwidth to handle emergency workloads. A site that works during a small test may struggle when many users suddenly connect at once. Bandwidth, latency, routing, authentication, and security monitoring all matter. If the recovery site relies on the same telecommunications provider and the same physical route as the primary site, one cable cut or provider outage could affect both. Connectivity planning should also account for voice communications, incident coordination, vendor support, and access to cloud-based services. During recovery, people need to communicate clearly and reach the systems that matter. A recovery site without dependable connectivity may become little more than an expensive room. Operational needs include the people, processes, supplies, and support required to keep work moving. A recovery site may need desks, laptops, phones, printers, secure storage, conference areas, identity badges, visitor procedures, food options, restrooms, accessibility support, and safe working conditions. It may also need documented procedures for who reports to the site, who works remotely, who has authority to declare a disaster, and who coordinates the transition. A hot site may be technically ready but still ineffective if nobody knows when to activate it or how to operate from it. Staffing assumptions should be realistic. In a regional emergency, Employees may be dealing with family needs, transportation problems, closed roads, or personal safety concerns. This is why many modern resilience plans combine alternate sites with remote work options and cloud services. Recovery planning should support the mission, but it also has to account for real human limitations. Security controls must travel with the recovery plan. A recovery site should not become a weaker version of the primary environment where normal protections are skipped because the organization is in a hurry. Physical access control, visitor management, camera coverage, secure storage, network segmentation, logging, identity controls, encryption, monitoring, and incident response procedures still matter. In fact, attackers may take advantage of disruptions because people are distracted and processes are under pressure. A rushed recovery can lead to shared accounts, temporary access that is never removed, untracked devices, exposed data, or poorly configured systems. The recovery environment should be designed with security built in, not added after the emergency starts. For exam purposes, remember that resilience and security are connected. The goal is not only to get systems running again. The goal is to restore operations in a controlled, trustworthy, and defensible way. Testing is what separates a believable recovery site from a hopeful assumption. An organization should periodically test whether the alternate site can support the systems and people it is meant to support. That testing may include tabletop discussions, technical failover exercises, connectivity checks, data restoration, access validation, power tests, staff notification exercises, and full or partial recovery simulations. Testing often reveals practical gaps that planning documents miss. A password may be unavailable. A vendor contact may be outdated. A network route may not work. A backup may restore too slowly. A generator may not support the expected load. A badge system may not include the right staff. Finding those issues during a test is much better than discovering them during a real emergency. Testing also helps leaders understand the difference between having a site on paper and having a site that can actually carry the business through disruption. Cost should be understood as more than the price of the building. A hot site may require duplicate infrastructure, software licensing, continuous data replication, technical staff, physical security, monitoring, and regular testing. A warm site may require less ongoing expense, but still needs enough investment to remain usable. A cold site may look inexpensive until the organization realizes how long it would take to acquire equipment, restore data, configure systems, and move people into place during a crisis. There is also the cost of downtime. If a service being offline causes lost revenue, safety issues, legal penalties, customer harm, or reputational damage, then a more expensive recovery option may be justified. A good resilience decision compares the cost of readiness with the cost of interruption. You are not choosing between expensive and cheap. You are choosing between different kinds of cost, including the hidden cost of being unprepared. For security plus questions, focus on the trade-off described in the scenario. If the organization needs the fastest recovery and can afford a fully prepared alternate environment, think hot site. If the organization needs a balanced option with some systems and infrastructure prepared, but not everything fully live, think warm site. If the organization mainly needs a basic location and can tolerate a longer recovery period, think cold site. If the question mentions regional disasters, think about geographic separation. If it mentions power, cooling, fire suppression, access roads, or workspace, think environmental planning. If it mentions multiple carriers or network paths, think connectivity resilience. If it mentions staff, procedures, and operational continuity, think beyond servers and consider the full working environment. Exam scenarios often hide the answer in the business requirement. Match the site type to the recovery urgency, budget, and readiness level described. The larger lesson is that resilience sites are practical tools for keeping an organization alive during disruption. A hot site gives speed and readiness at a high cost. A warm site gives a middle path with some preparation and some activation work still required. A cold site gives basic space and lower ongoing cost, but recovery will take longer and demand more effort during the event. Environmental planning makes sure the site can support real operations, including power, cooling, connectivity, geography, security, and people. A recovery location is not useful simply because it exists. It is useful when it matches business priorities, avoids shared risks, can be activated under pressure, and has been tested before it is needed. When you understand those trade-offs, you can read resilience questions with more confidence and choose the answer that fits the actual recovery need.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.